Tess is with Area One Agency on Aging as well.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, that makes total sense. Okay, where did my... Oh, it disappeared. How did that happen? Oh my, I had it. Hmm. Okay. Now I gotta find it. I'm gonna have a moment of silence while I find what I'm looking for, which doesn't appear to be here. All right. I'm happy to welcome you all and to welcome our presenter, Julie André. She became the Northcoast Homeshare Program Coordinator after moving here from France. She moved to Humboldt County to live with her partner, and since 2007, she's worked locally for different nonprofits and government agencies to promote and support access to services of diverse populations aged 0 to 92. We don't have anybody age 0 here. We just have to add at least 1 0 and several digits in the front. So, Julie, it's all yours. Please proceed.
All right. Okay, great. Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for the opportunity. And yes, I am from France. I gave a presentation on Saturday at the California Retired Teachers Association and their spring brunch. And I was asked if I was from Germany because apparently I have a strong German accent, but no, I am from France. So that's where the accent is from. So I'm gonna jump right in, and I would say if you wanted to um, ask any questions, please do so during the presentation. It is as good. I mean, I'd like to make it a fairly practical presentation, as practical as possible. Think of it maybe not for yourself if you're attending today just out of general interest, curiosity about what does it mean to share your home in Humboldt County, and maybe you're thinking of somebody else or you're thinking about it for yourself further down the line. This is really meant to be a practical um, situation. And I'm getting people. I'm admitting all kinds of people to this meeting. I didn't realize I would have those privileges, but
Please
um,
don't
That's
worry
okay,
about that.
Julie.
I
I'll
will.
take care of it.
okay, all right, okay, okay. So we're gonna look at some benefits, pitfalls, and best practices, and we're gonna start with if I get this to move forward. Yes, I am. We're going to start with a definition of home sharing for those of you who might not be completely clear on what that means. So home sharing is when two or more unrelated people share a home to their mutual benefit. It requires that a person will offer a private bedroom and shared common areas in exchange for rent, help around the house, or a combination of the two. The home can be any livable home, really, as long as there's a private room for each person. And I know that we live in a college town and there's plenty of organic shared housing that happens around here. But with home sharing, the idea is that it will differ. It differs from that typical housemate situation because at its core, it's about two people helping each other satisfy their housing needs with clarity of expectations for each partner. So it's not just like, oh, I'm going to rent this room from this landlord and that landlord also is renting out to another housemate that I've never met before. So it's really having a kind of partnership. So every home share arrangement is unique. It depends on the needs, time, interests, and abilities of the people involved. And the goal is really to figure out which two lifestyles have the best chance to mesh for the most harmonious outcome for the whole household. So someone who works for Homeshare in Australia, a Homeshare program in Australia, said that each home sharing match is a new and unique puzzle which has to be teased out, carefully understood, and responded to appropriately, requiring high-level assessment and problem-solving skills. And honestly, when doing this work over the past 4 years, sometimes it happens really quickly, but every time we feel like it's a little miracle that happens when two people decide, yes, we would like to move forward and go ahead and be matched together. So in popular culture, you might know about the Golden Girls. Two of them were related, but most of them were not. So it leads to quite a bit of interesting situations, drama, etc. But overall, that's the way they chose to satisfy their housing needs. What home sharing is not really quickly, just in case you're thinking of someone you know and maybe they could use someone living in the home with them. Um, it does not include any type of personal care as part of the service exchange. No bathing, no toileting, no dressing assistance. It's also not an alternative to nursing home care. However, you might want to combine home sharing with other support, such as hired caregiving services, and that would be a way to stay living in one's own home longer. It is also not emergency or short-term housing, since the process of finding the right match will take time. Sometimes we have people calling into the program like, oh, I need housing for like tomorrow. And I'm not even kidding. But we have to decline. It's not short-term housing, and you might be better off calling 211 or other services. And it is also not, so our program here, right? It's not a traditional housing program with waiting lists or eligibility-based criteria. We're really trying to make a match. So home sharing is really about that compatibility piece. So traditionally, so an example of a more stereotypical home sharing partnership would have been that we're going to have a host, which is the home provider, someone who is relatively house rich and cash poor. That's the way home providers might be described. So, you've paid off your house, and maybe now that you've retired, your income has dropped quite a bit. So you don't have as much disposable income as you might have had before retiring. As we age, a lot of people, I was just telling Jane, I play pickleball on a regular basis, and there's plenty of people who are 20 to 30 years older than me who are more able-bodied than I am. But as we age, there's more of a chance that we might be dealing with some physical ailments that might make us less able-bodied. And then also as we age, we might also become more isolated. On the other end, there would be a guest or a home seeker or housemate. For example, a single mature student. At that point in their life, a lot of people like both housing and cash, and they will be more able-bodied. They will have relatively more flexible time. And so in that partnership, people might be able to satisfy their needs in that home sharing, in that shared housing situation. A host would get a boost in income from the extra rent, whereas the guest would get affordable housing, which typically home shares are going to be quite a bit cheaper than an independent unit. For the host, it might mean also to taking in that housemate might mean minor domestic help, so helping with some chores around the house that are less feasible for the host potentially, and that would be a huge help, really. And for the guests, maybe because they're a little bit shorter on cash, maybe they get that cheaper, more affordable housing in exchange for some services. So in this scenario, both partners benefit from household economies of scale in utilities and other expenses as well. So the reality of home shares in California is not quite that stereotypical situation. In our case, nowadays, home sharing can benefit almost anyone at some point, given the current housing situation. Locally, home seekers have been in the following circumstances. So, and this is from our experience. So a more typical home seeker will have been denied traditional housing unless they've been vouched for. So maybe they have poor credit, they have an income that doesn't that that is not the 3 times the monthly rent that most traditional apartments or property management agencies or landlords will require. And sometimes they've experienced or they're currently experiencing homelessness. Those folks who will go through home share, they might be in transition. So we find, and maybe you also have your own anecdotes of that kind of situation. We find that a lot of folks who are retiring in other parts of California are relocating to our area after some life change also. Or we get a lot of folks who are coming and relocating to Humboldt County to be closer to family. Often it's going to be a grown child, or sometimes there's even grandchildren in the picture. We've had also situations where the home seeker is separating from someone and they were sharing housing then. And so now they have to kind of start over when they come out to the area. Also, the retirement time is a time of transition, or sometimes people have been applying to disability, and now they are getting disability, and their income is dropping quite significantly. We also have folks who are impacted by the inflation of housing costs. So what's going on in our area, and you might also be aware of that, is that a lot of homeowners around here are giving notice to people who've been renting from them for a long time because they'd like to sell, because they themselves might be looking at moving out of the area, and they're like, they're cutting their ties to Humboldt County, so they want to sell. And in order to sell, they're giving their renters notice. Or they want to remodel because, it's time. And often they want to remodel because they want to sell for a higher profit. And sometimes they also want to move in themselves with their family. So maybe they've been living out of the area, or maybe they're downsizing and that unit makes more sense for them, etc. So a whole host of reasons, but we see a lot of folks who come to our program kind of in a panic, like, I've been renting for so long, and then, they're not finding rentals with the same level of rent. And then we also have folks who want a home share because they would like to save up for a deposit, because sometimes it's like first starters, I guess, like people just starting out, they have an entry-level job and they can't even put down a deposit for a traditional rental because the cost to accessing those rentals is going to be, so it's the monthly rent, then it's first and last, and maybe something else on top of that. So it's a few $1,000s, and people don't necessarily have that are, out of college and just starting out in life. And then we have a lot of folks who are waiting for subsidized housing to open up. So when I first started, those waiting lists were 2 or 3 years long, and now it's bumped up a couple years. So I'm gonna see in the chat because I don't know what the expectation is for the chat. Do I address those, Jane?
Yes, you do address those. Is there an expectation that the sharing is permanent, or is it specified in advance? Hey, I'm going to do this for a few years.
Uh,
How is it addressed legally as well? I mean, how does this work?
yeah, so I mean, I'm gonna speak from my program's perspective. We ideally people would have at least the intention of sharing housing for 6 months, for a minimum of 6 months, but it's all month to month. So we understand that people's situations change, and as we get older, they can change very quickly, and that's happened before. So there's no such thing as a lease of a year. Um, and I'll talk about that a little later, but we've had situations that lasted as short, as little as I don't know, a week. But we've had trials also, but maybe like 2 months, and then we've had some that lasted more than 3 years. So it really there's a whole gamut. But people understand that it's not like forever and ever. Other folks have come to the program from like organic, I want to say, home sharing situations that they had set up on their own, and they'd been sharing for like a few years, like 6 years. One of our last home share situations, the guest had been sharing for 6 years, and then that situation changed and he wanted to move out of it. And how are these home shares addressed legally from a contract perspective? Yeah, and we can talk about that. So that's part of the best practices would be to have a rental agreement so that we can all figure out what was the original arrangement and agreement, etc. I encounter plenty of folks who set up those home share arrangements on their own uh, without any kind of documentation, which is really surprising to me, but it works until it doesn't work anymore. And then you're like, well, so how do we terminate this? So definitely always having some kind of um, documentation, contract to refer to, even if it means changing the terms, or if in reality maybe you're deviating a little bit, at least you always have that to go back to. All right. And let me see, can I go back?
I said, I presume you have standard documentation. Is it comparable to a lease? And can we look at one?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I remember like 3 years ago when I did this, I sent our standard, our template to some people who were interested. Yeah, and I covered that a little bit further in the presentation. But yeah, we call this a home sharing agreement, but it's kind of like a rental agreement. It's just that compared to a traditional rental agreement, the whole first part is the living together arrangements, and even though we have discussions with everybody about like so what is your routine like, what kind of lifestyle do you lead, or would you have visitors, we cover some of those aspects, but in the living together agreement we actually address those aspects of living together, and the two parties, make decisions as to what they want for their specific situation. So are we okay with romantic overnights or not? And they can ask me, and I can recommend yeah or nay or what, depending. But people go over that so that it's very clear. So again, like, and I'll talk about that again, like clarity of expectations is really front and center to start off on the right foot, on the right footing. Yeah. So I wanted to, as far as like the definition of home sharing, also what it looks like locally. These two ladies, and I have a bigger picture here. Kathy and Molly, they shared a home for exactly 2 years, and they really made it work in a tiny home with this rescue pit bull who was dog aggressive and not human aggressive, thank goodness, because when I first met with Kathy, whose dog it is, she said, oh, here, gave Rocky a treat, and so I had to extend that my open hand to this massive pit bull's face, which I'm not super used to dogs, but she was very gentle with me. And Molly, as part of the agreement, would uh, dox it essentially when Kathy would go and visit her parents, or she had like a newborn granddaughter in Oregon, and she just couldn't take her dog with her. So Molly was paying $500, which all included, which is quite a reasonable amount of rent for the even back in 2021. Uh, and back in October, and she got on a waiting list for senior housing. And back in October, she told me that she'd been accepted in those new apartments off of, I want to say it's West Avenue, brand new apartments. And she was made manager, I think, of that complex, of those apartment complex, sorry. So those that worked really well for them. Another kind of home share situation is to help a much older home provider who is still fairly independent remain housed in a more traditional housing situation. So in this case, we have Millie in the chair, sitting in the chair, who is 91 now. She's turned 91. And she has a 2-bedroom in Eureka, and she'd been living on her own up until that point. And she started talking about care homes, and the family said, "Oh, well, maybe not a care home. That's a little bit radical for you, since you do well." And what she really wanted was companionship. But even at the beginning, she said, "Well, but not too much. Okay, so I don't want someone who's too chatty or is too much. Like, I need my privacy." And so we connected her with Shelley, who was in transition. So she had been around for, a year and a half, but still kind of in transition, since she was living at her sister's in McKinleyville, and she was looking to become a little bit more independent after separating from her husband in Oregon. So they got set up together, and Shelley at first was ideal for Millie because she was not home too much. So Millie still had pretty much full range of her space most of the day. And the thing is, then Shelley's working, and then she's coaching at her niece and nephew's school, and then she's coaching some more. And so sometimes she wouldn't get home until like 8 or 9. And after 3 months, Millie said, "Well, I wouldn't mind a little bit more companionship." So they worked it out. They were always in communication also with the family, and they figured out that, they weren't necessarily satisfying each other's housing needs. And Shelley was ready to move on to her own place. And so she figured that part out, and we helped Millie connect with a new housemate. So that's where I'm saying that sometimes it can be good for they were together for like just 5 months. So they were just short of like the 6 months that we think of as being a successful match. But it worked for the time that it did. $200 for a room in Eureka, not a bad deal. And they had a whole system going where they did share some good moments together. So some other home sharing partnerships. We've been working with someone on Humboldt Hill in Eureka, and Pamela has set up a multi-housemate household. So she has this very large home with tall ceilings, etc. And so she occupies the first floor, the ground floor of the home, because she has a number of mobility challenges. And she rents out to 5 housemates on the top floor. And there's a very large bathroom, and one of the rooms has its own bathroom. So we've connected her over the years since 2020 with a number of housemates. Currently, she's hosting two housemates that we vetted through the program. And so one of her housemates is 68. And interestingly, the way she came to Humboldt, so she transitioned from Southern California to Humboldt County. And she came with a U-Haul back in 2020. And so she had a medical emergency. And that was like a string, like it started like it had a domino effect on other aspects of her life. She lost a U-Haul with all the belongings, and she ended up at Betty Jean's women's shelter. So that's how that's where she was when she applied to the program. But the thing is, her retirement income is very acceptable for the kind of for this amount of rent. It was a little bit cheaper at the time, so it's gone up a little bit since. But she was screened through Homeshare. They met during an introductory meeting. We background checked, and she's been living there for just short of 3 years. It's going to be 3 years in May of 2024, so in just a couple of weeks. Barbara is a much more recent homeshare match for Pamela. She's 62, and she also has moved from out of the area, and she feels like this is an area where she might even be able to I mean, her dream is to get her own plot of land and have her own place at 62. But so at 62, she's still working, and she was renting a hotel room at a weekly rate when she got in touch with us. So these are ways to get an idea of who are the people in Humboldt County who are using homesharing as a way to satisfy their housing needs. There's plenty other people out there. I'm just talking about the people who chose to go through our program to connect safely with their housemate or home provider. So a couple other ones. Michael, who's retired from Progressive Insurance in early 70s, he'd been living and taking care of his sister who had early onset Alzheimer's, and there was a point when he wasn't able to continue being her caregiver. And he waited a little bit over a year to open up his home to a housemate. So one of the reasons why he wanted to have a housemate was to also create more housing locally and to have the social interactions, the light social interactions of having someone else in the home. So he was introduced to two housemates. So we set up two different meetings of about an hour long each, and he declined the first one because there was too much of I think he was reminded of a past romantic relationship, and he said, no, it's just not going to work for me. And then the second housemaid, she declined because she felt the bedroom was too dark, too confining for her. She's a really tall lady, and so she couldn't see herself living there. And the third time was the charm. He clicked with him, and so he's been sharing his home with Eduardo, who is fully employed by the county as a Spanish translator. And Eduardo came from Southern Humboldt, where he was living with his son and his wife, and he's in the process of getting divorced. So very much in transition, and having that place to stay in Eureka made his commute a lot easier. He's renting for $600 and $25 in utilities for a room where he brought his own bed, but they share a shower room. So it's a shower room, and that's okay. And I see there's something in the chat.
How often do you get inquiries, and are you generally able to place most people?
So we get inquiries on a very regular basis, and it's both inquiries from home seekers and home providers. Um, and I don't like using the word placement because it's really, I mean, you see with Michael and Eduardo, Michael declined one person and then the other. So people really choose to live together. Um, and what was the other question? I'm sorry. How often? Yeah, how often I want to say like since the start of the year, I have over 90 calls into the program. So I want to say like one or two a day on a regular basis. And I'll talk about that maybe a little bit later, but up until now, we had more home seekers than we had home providers, and we're finding ourselves having a hard time connecting with housemates for our current housing opportunities, housing openings. So it seems like the trend has flipped where we have more housing than we have housemates for, which I'd heard about before, and I couldn't quite believe that it could be ever my situation, but apparently it is. Um, so another home provider is Camille. She's early 70s. She's not retired. She works for the local school, so her schedule follows the school agenda. And she'd had a housemate before she came to us. She actually got in touch with our program before it got started in 2020. And then when I checked in with her, she said she'd already connected with a housemate. And she has a ranch home in Fortuna, 3 bedroom, 2 bathrooms. So her room is connected to the one bath. But so a housemate can have the hallway bathroom pretty much to themselves. And when her housemate that she'd connected with outside of the program gave her his notice, she took in a traveling nurse because she really wanted to have someone also quite quickly. But the thing is with traveling nurses, and I'll talk about that in the resources to connect with the housemate, it's through Furnished Finder, and typically people stay for a very limited amount of time. So sometimes they will go up until 6 months, but so you find yourself always looking like always trying to connect with the next housemate. So once that person left, she decided to wait to connect with someone who would be wanting to stay a little bit long term. So I realized I didn't introduce her to a couple, like to two people who were a couple, but to a couple different housemates. The first lady that I introduced her to, then her situation changed, and so she declined to even pursue trying to home share. And now she's been home sharing with Joseph, who is mid-60s and who is not retired. He works as a chef. I think he's worked at the Philbrook Winery, at the Arcata Theater Lounge. And so there were some things based on his lifestyle and hers that we had to discuss during the introductory meeting, since she gets up pretty early, and I want to say like as early as like 5:30 in the morning, and then he was going to come home after the events were done. So that was especially from Arcata, and she's in Fortuna. So it was not going to be until like, sometimes midnight. So how does that impact her, also her lifestyle? So he was currently paying $700 all included, and he's moving out in May 2024. So Camille, in the past, also she's an interesting one because she has been home sharing, and she is considering, she's told me in the past, if the right situation comes along in Arcata, I have a lot of my activities in Arcata, and I would like to retire. I thought she was going to retire last year, and then she continued on. But so I think she's wants to retire this year, and she is considering sharing herself. Like she is considering becoming someone's housemate so that she could access housing in Arcata. And I think for her, the solution might be that she will keep her home in Fortuna and maybe rent it out whole and then um, be a housemate to someone in the Arcata area. And I have someone in Blue Lake right now who's about to be fully processed and approved as a host in Blue Lake. And I was thinking of her because I think they could be a very potential and compatible match. Um, so should I read the message, Jane, or did you want to do that?
Let's see. You can go ahead. Well, I have a friend in Southern California who, after 3 years, asked her roommate to leave. They had no contract, and the woman refused to leave. My friend had to hire a lawyer to get the woman to leave. Are there protections for people in Humboldt County?
Yeah, so I've I've heard of that. Usually, and usually people get confused. Like, is it a notice? Do you get a notice to vacate or an eviction? So an eviction takes filing papers requiring a person to leave with the court system, and so you have to pay some money. If and that comes usually after you've asked someone to leave. So when it comes to protections, that would be your ultimate protection, is that this is your home. You have a right to access to your home and to do whatever you please with your private home. If you have a contract with your housemate, a rental agreement or a home sharing agreement, there will be terms about how to terminate that agreement in in the arrangement in the agreement. So ideally, you're always talking with the housemate and figuring out the next steps, including the termination. It happens on occasion, and I could see that in Southern California, that with more anonymity, that you could get away with more. I think in Humboldt County, people have more of a buy-in in doing things by the book because they know that it could really impact their future chances at securing housing. So we've never had a housemate, even when there was some kind of conflict or more of a challenging end to a relationship, we've never had a housemate decline to keep talking to us. We were always able to talk to them and figure out next steps. So, so the protection would be legal protections. But as far as our experience, also vetting the housemates and helping make those connections and setting up those arrangements, we've never had to resort to um, to an eviction, or no, none of our home providers have ever had to resort to an eviction. Lately, though, last year I was trying to help a home provider connect with her housemate in Eureka, and she had a number of requirements, including she wanted her housemate to be fully vaccinated, and she couldn't have someone smoking because of health reasons, etc. So all very valid requirements, but I just wasn't connecting with the right person for her space, etc. And eventually I got a message, and she told me that she had connected with someone who had also applied to Homeshare, but I hadn't considered that person as a potential housemate for her because that person smoked, and she said so in her application. And so for me, even if she smoked outdoors, the home provider had been very clear. I can smell it. It comes into the home, and I can't have that. So people are going to do what they want, which is fair enough. And so she went ahead with that person back in September. A month ago, she got in touch with me and she said, I just wanted to let you know this person has been terrible in the past couple months, and I'm filing eviction paperwork. so because she will not leave my house. And so she knew that this person had also applied to the program, and I told her, well, I never even met with her. She just submitted a completed application, but typically I will not meet with someone in person unless I know that I have a potential home situation or housing situation for them. But so it was interesting for me to check in with her, and I appreciated the fact that she checked in. So I don't know if I would have figured out something that would have raised a red flag for this person, but this is what I hear of sometimes. It just has never happened within the scope of our program. And there's a chat. Okay, great. Thank you. I'm glad I'm helping you understand. Great. Yeah, there's plenty of horror stories out there, honestly, that people come to us and they're like, oh, and then this person just wouldn't pay rent and they changed the locks and then they jacked up the utilities by bringing a hot plate and then they wouldn't leave. Like, whoa. It's just it's a little bit of a jungle. So quickly, the profile of participants, as far as our program is concerned, since we're Area 1 Agency on Aging, we've had quite a few folks who were older who wanted to use our services to host someone in their home. It's mostly female home providers, and about 30% will need services like Millie in the article that I wrote, who was sitting in the chair. So about 4 of our current 13. And as far as home seekers, it's the same trend. About a third are male, 2/3 are female. Currently, a little bit more are of our housemates are male than our home providers. And they're typically going to be a little bit younger than our home providers. And again, real quick, a lot of people who apply to the program, their only source of income is SSI, SSDI, and I don't know if you know how much that is, but it's hardly anything, and we're going to go over that. But some of them have retirement on top of that, and quite a few work part-time or full-time. Oh, I don't know why this is repeated. And so this is Rob. He was matched with a home provider in Cotton in March or February, I think. Yeah, that's my second to last one. And for a really long time, I wasn't able to figure out a housing situation for him. He does have a dog, Buddy, who's very sweet, but can be a little barky. And Rob he's such a nice guy, but he couldn't afford much. He also is one of those home seekers who moved to the area from the Bay Area to be closer to his family. He's got a daughter locally and a grandchild, and he was living with them for a long time. And kind of like Molly with Kathy, who that's the way she had started too locally. There's a point where the family, especially with a younger child, and in his case, I think his grandchild is special needs, they needed to get the space back. And so he got in touch, and I was working with him. I introduced him to a home provider who ended up not being a good fit for our program, just overall. And just recently, I introduced him to someone who is in his 80s and who had tried with another housemate, and that a female housemate that hadn't worked out. And they're making it work really well. I think they're really happy with each other right now. So it's been a couple months. And just to go back, so this is for me, I don't want to say this is the ideal housemate, but this is a solid housemate. So this is someone who he's not getting SSI yet, but so the thing is with him is that he does not have any credit. So he chose to max out his credit cards, whatever. I mean, he explained his whole situation to me. But it's not that he doesn't have any income. He likes to buy and sell, and he's really good at that. And I think he really enjoys uh, I guess, he's drawn to that kind of, uh, oh, he never knows what the next day is gonna entail. And he's his own boss, etc. So he makes variably, I want to say like $2,000 to $2,500 a month, but just by buying and selling. Uh, uh, and the thing is, for a traditional rental, he has absolutely no credit. So yeah, that's where home sharing comes in handy for him. And and in the past few months, the home provider has reported that yeah, he pays his rent early, basically. So some of the benefits of shared housing, of course, the cost. So as mentioned quickly, the retirement realities, that's for the United States overall, not necessarily California. Um, that's about 10 years old, but still. I don't think, honestly, the Social Security, SSI, most of our clients make just about $1,000, so it's even a little less than what's on there. So nowhere, yeah, that's what it says. Nowhere in the United States can someone rely solely on their Social Security income to live alone. And so we find that a lot of folks who are on Social Security, either they have subsidized housing, and then, on top of that, maybe they have EBT, so CalFresh or food stamps. But there's really hardly anything to do anything fun. And a lot of people can't afford to have a car, etc. So being a little bit more central in terms of centrally, I guess, located is important, as opposed to being outside of town where you need a car, etc. So let's see. Yeah, one of our home providers gets, I think, $700 a month in retirement. So living in shared housing can reduce one's cost of housing and make it manageable. That's whether someone chooses to stay put and take in a housemate or downsize to rent in someone else's home. So it could be, it doesn't have to be just a home seeker. It could be also that someone is in their own home, like Camille, and thinking, well, I'd really like to downsize. I don't need that much space, and I really want to be close to the activities that bring me joy on a regular basis, and I don't want all this stuff. And so I'm going to move into someone else's home. So sharing will almost always alleviate the burden of the bills that one pays no matter what. We don't need to raise the temperature so much, even if we have someone else in the home. Wi-Fi, it's going to be like one flat fee. And then you always pay the same for trash, recycling, etc.
I think it's the same thing.
Okay. And it's Judith. Judith, did you want to say something? Because I can see. Judith, did you want to say something? No. Okay. All right. So the result of shared housing could be less financial stress and maybe even more disposable income. So for instance, right now I have a home seeker. Her income is just over $3,000 in retirement. And she's sharing, she wants to share because she wants to be able to travel. So she's got family, I think in the Midwest or somewhere else. And she wants to be able also to just take off and don't have to worry about leaving her home behind, I guess. So there's that situation too. So it might be worth considering. And again, this presentation, thank you for attending. Maybe shared housing is something that you would never even consider doing. I was just saying, Jane, before we started, I've had so many people come to the program and say, "Oh, I wish I'd known about this before," even though I feel like I do a lot of outreach, etc. And on occasion, people tell me, "Well, someone just told me about it." So we've had actually Rob's home provider has been he's connected me with a couple different people already. Like, oh, I never knew about this. So word of mouth for us is huge. And some questions still worry you in terms of how much you can afford for housing. Maybe you're very comfortable, or maybe your cost burden. And like, oh, I wish I could either downsize or I could decrease those costs. And a question for you or for whoever you want to tell about this wonderful presentation. How would your life or how would their life be different if you had an extra $500 a month? Because that would account to $6,000 a year. And typically, I want to say that $600 is a little bit more typical these days.
Rowetta has a question. If home seekers are poor and don't even file taxes, can they be claimed on homeowners' tax filing as head of the household instead of individuals? How do you go about claiming income you receive at the end of the year, rental forms, etc.?
Oh, I don't know about that. So I would say, checking in with your tax advisor about that. We've never had issues of people telling us, well, that put me like in another tax bracket or anything like that. I would need to get back to you on that.
I'm sure they can't be claimed as head of the household.
Can't, cannot.
I'm
I
sure they
doubt it.
can't. They
Yeah, I
they
doubt it. Yeah. Well,
they may
unless you
be
start
dependent.
a more meaningful relationship with them or a different kind of relationship with them, and then, they become your partner. But yeah, I doubt they could be claimed as head of household. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you claim the income at the end of the year? Again, it
Yeah, I'm not sure, I don't even do my own taxes. I'm sorry to report. So
it would it would be taxable income, I'm quite sure.
I would think so. Yes. Yeah. But so, it's $6,000, but I want to say that there might be a way also um to put this. I don't know. I'll get back to you on that. Yeah. It's never really come
Anytime
up.
you get more than $600,
Say
uh,
again?
anytime you're getting, I think, more than $600 or something, it would be rental income. I'm
Yeah.
quite sure. But check the tax forms or check with the tax advisor. Call
Yeah.
the IRS. They have more people on board these days. They might get an answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Any other questions from anybody? Are you done? Do you have more to present?
Oh, I have more to present, but
Oh, well, go ahead.
yeah,
Yeah.
let me go through it. Yeah, so companionship would be another benefit, and I'll go a little bit faster. Um, so we're social creatures, okay? The whole idea that we should be alone, living alone, independently from anybody, that's a fairly recent concept. So it really and it's not just in American culture, that happens also in I think most westernized cultures is that you live on your own, like you get out of your parents' house, you set up on your own, and that's it pretty much. That's kind of like the epitome of independence and self-reliance. uh so at some point, yeah, we had that nuclear family, and maybe it's a big family, but then the kids will kind of follow that same pattern, and you end up with a nest that's empty, and maybe your partner is gone for whatever reason. So I know some folks that are perfectly happy on their own, but they might not be the majority. So, there has been an advisory on the epidemic of loneliness and social isolation released by the U.S. General Surgeon. But that's that epidemic had been reported on even before the pandemic. So you can imagine that that probably didn't help matters. There's this amazing fact that chronic loneliness will increase the risk of early mortality more than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So it has really like a domino effect. So the less people we see, the less we want to talk, and it's kind of toxic to our bodies, even though it's something that starts in the mind, and it really impacts our bodies. So living in shared housing, yeah, can increase one's chances of social interactions, both between housemates, but also with each other's extended social network. Well, before retirement, living alone can feel like a sanctuary. You're coming home, there's no one there. You're like, phew, after a day at work, it's kind of nice. But if you're retired and you don't have that many outside activities, it might feel a little bit confining. I know a lot of people who manage plenty of activities and outside, and then they come home and they are indeed feeling very good about that space being empty. But what we find is that when I mentioned during personal interviews, we ask, oh, would you be interested in sharing any activities with your housemate? People typically respond positively, whether they are home seekers or home providers. So whether those shared moments actually happen in real life, it's another question. But the idea of connecting with a prospective housemate around a meal, a game, a walk, or a TV show, that always seems to be appealing to potential home sharers. So this month is Older Americans Month, the whole month of April. Oh, sorry, next month. Sorry, next month. They're really emphasizing that powered by connection, that connecting as much as possible. However, whatever feeds your soul, this is the month to do it, and beyond, of course. To help with that social isolation aspect of our lives. Other benefits of shared housing, real quick: mutual support. You can help each other with tasks, just like in any kind of partnership. So thinking for yourself or anybody you're thinking of, are there any tasks or areas of the household where you could benefit from another person's help? And I do want to put it out there, and I'm sure you all know about the Redwood Coast Village. If you're a member, they have volunteers who can come out and help with tasks such as even like changing a light bulb or dog walking, like those types of tasks. So there's something out there. If you don't want to take in a housemate, there are options out there in the community. Sustainability, yeah, the math is easy. If you have two people sharing the same space, they both will need less energy, less stuff, even possibly less driving. If as a housemate you're able to move, as mentioned earlier, in a neighborhood that's just has more that's more walkable or more accessibility to services. And the whole person health. That comes from this website called Shared Housing. And this is an aspirational benefit, and that depends on the relationship that one will choose to have with their housemate. So are they just going to be a renter, a boarder, or just a housemate? The lady who started out that website, she's talking about having more of a homemate. So the idea that you're building that exchange that will feed your whole person. And even if it's just a little bit, just like for Millie, she thought she would get saturated pretty easily with her housemate, and then it turns out she wanted more, because I think she realized the kind of exchange that she was getting from having another person in the home just made her feel really good. So sometimes it doesn't happen, and I'm not saying it's gonna happen right away, but it's the idea that if the person who moves into your home is someone that you truly respect, that you're somewhat interested in, that you could have that kind of relationship and gratifying relationship. So benefits for the whole community. It's almost goes without saying that it's a lot more affordable to rent in shared housing situation. It's cheap to build because it's already available. It requires no permitting, sorry, and it will profit low-income landlords. So it's been found, 20 years ago already, but home sharing has been around for so long, that once experienced, home sharing was more valued for its social benefits than the economic benefits. That's Homeshare Colorado put together this visual from in 2020. I don't have the resources to do anything like that, but I thought that was so interesting to see how. So they had set up 18 matches, 18 home sharing partnership, and all the cost savings that those partnerships brought about for the individual home provider and the home seeker, but also for the community as a whole. And we often talk also about home sharing being a way to prevent homelessness. So before someone actually gets to the point where they start experiencing homelessness, maybe it's a home renter or even a homeowner who's financially in distress, that is a fairly quick fix. If they're not too far down in the financial distress, to help that person remain housed. So some pitfalls, rushing into a partnership because someone sounds good. I've had quite a few people telling me that, oh yeah, she sounds good, she sounds good. And just recently, someone connected with a potential housemate, and she's one of our approved home providers. And I said, well, why don't you send her over to our program and she'll fill out that application. And she did, and turns out that this housemate, one of her deal breakers is litter boxes in the home. And of course, during the phone conversation that they both had, that was never brought up. But she made it very clear, I think she even underlined it on the application, no litter boxes in the home. Like, she just cannot stand it. So we saved each other quite a bit of time by figuring that piece out as a deal breaker. Another pitfall is the lack of clarity in expectations and self-awareness. So for the home providers, one way to figure out your own profile and who might be a matching profile for yourself, for your situation, is what are some of your requirements to use your home and your possessions? So for yourself or for whoever you're thinking of who might be interested in home sharing. What would you be willing to compromise on? In which areas of your lifestyle do you have flexibility for change? And for both home providers and housemates, what are your main pet peeves? So what is something that you just couldn't stand? And on the other side, what can't you live with? And what can you not live without? So, oh, I can't live without having radio in the background. Well, that might be hard for someone else who needs silence most of the time. And what would you like to have? So there's preferences, and then there's absolute deal breakers, like the litter boxes. I was trying to figure out, also, what about if the litter box was off in the attached garage, how would that, and figured out that really, I think it was just having a cat, an indoor cat, that was going to be the issue. So in terms of best practices, and I see maybe there's a question. Can home seekers get government aid for renting even if it's shared housing? Does the home provider have to fill out a lot of paperwork to help the housemate qualify? You mean for government aid? So I am not I'm not educated on the Section 8, but there are which is now, it's called a choice housing choice voucher. And if as a home provider you are willing to go through the approval process, I think from the housing authority, you could have someone rent your room with a housing choice voucher, but you do have to go through their process too. So we've never had that through our program because it is definitely an extra step. But so someone who would be lower income might be able to access housing, like nicer housing that way. But I don't know of any other subsidies. Sometimes the senior center, their housing department, and sometimes also the women's shelter, Betty Chin's shelter or foundation, they're able to help with the deposit and the first month, but typically it's not like a sustained subsidy. So I hope that, yeah. Thank you for the question. So beyond basic information on location, pets, rent amount, deposit, utilities, smoking, you should conduct a phone interview if you're going to do this alone before meeting in person. That's highly recommended. And then asking, and I could forward those to you if you're interested in doing this on your own. What's your current living situation where you're looking to change it? Why do you want to share as opposed to living on your own? What's a typical day like for you? So you're trying to figure out like, how would that even be like living with this person? Like how often do you have visitors? Is it going to be like a mad crowd every day? Or are you going to be like holed up in your bedroom like a hermit? I don't know. How social are you? How much time do you need? Et cetera, et cetera. And I know I'm running out of time. So there's all kinds of questions you could be asking. And how do I get funds for the work that I do? Do I take a percentage, grant money, or simply donate your time? So I am a paid staff member of Area 1 Agency on Aging, and that's a great question. I've actually cut that out of the presentation, but the way this program started was through a a grant from St. Joe's, from the hospital, the Care for the Poor grant, and it's paid for 16 hours a week for a whole year. And the idea was that, we're going to get this home sharing program started, and then it's going to be run by volunteers. So we won't even have to pay for staff. And then the pandemic hit. It was in 2020. And so running this program without staff was just, management realized that was just not going to be possible. So the funds are now through the California Department of Aging. We do not take a percentage. We are a no-cost program. Other programs on the East Coast and sometimes even in California, they are fee-based programs. So there is a sliding scale, and depending on the person's income, they will take a percentage of the rent as a fee. And so it's a one-time thing. Yeah, and we do have a volunteer who she donates her time, obviously. But when I first started, I was teaching French at a middle school, and I was really trying to figure out more meaningful work. And I was going to volunteer my time, honestly, because I thought this was such valuable and invaluable endeavor for the area. Like, if they don't hire me, I'm just gonna volunteer my time because I think this is such a cool program. Yeah, so once you've had that phone conversation, consider meeting with the person face to face in a neutral setting, like a library, coffee shop, a park. It's really for you to assess if the other person's lifestyle might be compatible with yours. There's no reason being shy. Some hard questions need to be asked. I want to say that the best meetings, introductory meetings that I go to is where people just don't like chit chat. They're like, so this is what I need to know about you, and this is what you should know about me, etc. So any insights are invaluable. And you can bring some topics for discussion. I always bring those to our introductory meeting in order to address very specific areas of any shared housing arrangement. So what's your ideal home share arrangement could be one. What do you think might be challenging about living with you? And that's also self-awareness and expectations. And I've had people tell me like, I don't know, nothing. Like what, and when I think about what could be challenging about living with me, Julie, in my home, if I were to share, I can come up with quite a few things. It's like, don't really talk to me in the morning. Like I want to be alone, you know, or I will need I want to be able to listen to the radio quite often. So in the shared space, so that's going to be a challenge. And sometimes I like baking projects, and so you might not be. I might be in the kitchen for like 2 hours at a time, and it's going to get super messy, and then I'm going to clean up. But so you know that might be a challenge for a housemate. And that's an article I wrote for the Senior News, and kind of like with the Halloween take on it. But it's again like, of course, you don't want to have a nightmare housemate move in with you. You want someone who's going to be compatible and have that. Of course, I mean, ideally, it would be like a symbiotic relationship where you just like mesh. But you got to be also realistic, and maybe that happens at sometimes, and then some other times you kind of sink out of each other's groove. But being really clear on what you can deal with and what you can't, and what are your expectations for this whole partnership. So I wanted to show you the descriptions of our current housing openings. So I think I might have someone for this one. I don't know if it's easy for you all to see. But so all the information that I gather from my discussions with the host, I'm able to put down as a description. So if you wanted to go about this on your own, I would say making sure that you have an idea of what your profile could be like. So for instance, in this home provider, who's originally from the Sacramento area, so she works from home on the second floor. So that's going to be huge for a home sharing arrangement. And she's going to be in and out of the kitchen throughout the day. Other than that, she enjoys reading, hiking, biking. She usually goes out to socialize and doesn't have much company over. You know, that's the visitor piece. And the thing is too that she has a pet rabbit. The cage is in the kitchen, so someone who might not do well with animals and their droppings, etc., or whatever smells, that would not be a good match for this specific situation. And the rabbit was out when I visited with her. And then some ideas about the housemate who it is. Okay, and let me go back to this. Some other best practices, definitely reach out to references. Some people, there's quite a few scammers out there. And so if you meet with just a person and you still think, like I've had home providers tell me before, oh yeah, she seemed like such a nice lady, and they can really put up a good show. Ask them for their references. We talked to 3 personal references, and we use the same questions, and we start getting a really good idea of someone's profile. For a home seeker, we also talk to at least 1 housing reference, preferably 2, to get an idea of how does that person do, you know, with their rent, and did they respect the property, etc. And then if you could set up a trial period, ideally it would be 2 weeks, a minimum of a week, because you really can't know what you don't know. So people figure out stuff when they start living with each other. So the housemate comes in with just enough clothing, like as if they would be on vacation for a couple of weeks, and it's important to not have too many visitors at that time, or to make sure that the home provider is going to be around, and you know, figure out, is there anything that raises a red flag. Use a rental agreement. We already talked about that. Request or offer a deposit. That's always good practice. And also exchange emergency contact person details. And then if you can, once you're in the home sharing situation, try and check in with each other on a regular basis. So it can be a little bit more formal, more informal, depending on your style. But just making sure that you're checking in. Finding your housemate, Humboldt County. If you were going to do this by yourself, Craigslist for Humboldt. It's huge for our area. That's how I've connected with housemates before. But there's also a high potential for scams for both seekers and providers. So I've had plenty of folks looking for housing who told me that they had been scammed out of a few $1,000s from people from out of the area who put out ads, and I don't know, they get people to send them the deposit, and it's just insane what happens out there. There's some safer websites like roomies.com for the furnish finder that I talked about. I think that might be fee-based though. And then Cal Poly Humboldt, the off-campus housing, they've revamped it, and it's really well done now. So if you had a spare bedroom and you wanted to connect with a student, maybe for the academic year, that might be a way to put your place out there. You could try and connect through social media. That might be a little bit more comfortable. I use Nextdoor a lot since it's verified. In order to be part of Nextdoor, you have to receive a postcard in the mail. And so that's how they're able to verify that you are who you say you are. And then Facebook Marketplace, which I think Facebook, there's some issues with scams or their groups, housing groups. And then if you're not into anything web-based, you could always try word of mouth. That works. The classifieds, even though that could be for a fee. And then I just recently had luck with a flyer, good old flyer. So our agency does not charge a fee. So the question is, there a fee charged by the agency on aging to match housemates? We do not charge. We don't. It's all a no cost program. And otherwise, you could apply to our program. So we have a fully comprehensive program. I'm not going to, and this is all information that's on our website. So I'm going to go real fast, but we have that application that provides basic information, but really useful. And you could use it for your own, like if you didn't want to go through the program for whatever reason, just use that information. It's all out there. We do interviews, reference checks. We facilitate the introductions. We do pay for the background checks online once people want to move forward with a trial period, sorry, and we do the trial period, and then we provide the written agreement, and then we provide ongoing support too. So that would be one way. So these are all our documents: the guest application, the host application. That's the guide to ask questions during interviews to our guests, to our hosts. We have a memo for the trial match. So during a trial match, someone is just a guest. And so if anything happens during that time, the person usually will leave either that same day or within 1 or 2 days. So you don't have to give a notice or anything like that. They're just staying as a guest in the room. And then we have the home sharing agreement that's about 12 pages long. So I used to be really focused on recruiting more home providers in the past 3 years. It was all about like trying to get those housing openings. And it seems like currently it's not the issue. I'm having a hard time connecting with solid housemates. So I'm really trying to do outreach and thinking that given the rent amounts, people who are on SSI just can't necessarily afford those rent amounts. So I'm connecting with folks who have some form of employment and might want to save, etc., by renting a room. So I'm not going to go through all of those statistics. I don't think it's so relevant, but I could send them to you if you wanted to. I wanted to let everybody know that we also do home share meet and greets where people can, I would go over a lot of the same information. People can connect with current housemates or current home providers and home seekers. And we've had people connect that way during our meet and greets. We try to have them 3 to 4 times a year. The library is providing us with the space. You can just come at any point in time. We do have a little bit of an agenda where we start out by reviewing the process, etc. But it can help taking the edge of like, oh, who are those people who are looking for housing, or who are those people who are opening their homes and renting out a bedroom inside their home to, as a lot of people say, to a stranger. By the time we're finished with the home sharing process, people are no strangers to each other anymore. And finally, a shameless plug that if none of this is for you as a participant, we're always looking for volunteers. If you wanted to contribute in some way, I'm always happy to have someone help with calling references. I currently have one person who's helping me. She's been helping me for the past year and a half, and she's even helped with matching folks, etc. It's been invaluable, her help with taking this program, scaling up this program. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss local options for safe shared housing. And again, please share the information about our no-cost services with your extended social network. I really appreciate it. We know that it takes repeated messaging for home sharing to be considered as a viable housing option with community members.
Well, we really appreciate your presenting this topic because it is of interest to many of us.
Mm-hmm.
Will be probably in the future, and certainly for friends of ours. So I really appreciate your doing this excellent, well thought out, well presented talk. And hope you'll come back when you have more experience, maybe another year.
We try, I feel like we have quite a bit of experience. We're really like, if you know someone who is looking to share, like we have quite a few they're solid housing openings. The one in Blue Lake, honestly, like if I didn't have a family, I would be like, yeah, I'm moving in right now. That lady, she has a kiln, she's a ceramist. The view to Blue Lake is absolutely amazing. The bedroom is awesome. And she's a great lady. She's 79 and she's got so many life experiences, and she's like, she does so many things. To me, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm moving with you.
Yeah, I could do that. I need a change.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you ever so much, and for all the attendees. And I along these sort of lines of health and caregiving and sharing. Next week, we're going to be having a talk on supporting family caregivers, because many of us find ourselves supporting someone in the family or a friend who has had illnesses or an accident or dementia or comes down with cancer. And we end up being caregivers, full-time, part-time. And the issue is, what kind of support is available? You suddenly find yourself with a full-time job. And it's amazing how much exertion that takes, how much of your time it takes, how you have to change your lifestyle. Everything changes when that happens, whether it's an accident or a disease or what have you. So we're going to be talking next week about the challenge of what makes caregiving so difficult and the supports that are available for family caregivers as they navigate the journey. There's a tremendous need for support and for people to, your friends may not understand what changes in your world when suddenly you drop out of sight because guess what? The husband needs full-time care, or one of the kids gets in an accident and they need full-time care and they can't be alone. So it's very challenging, and we hope you'll come back next week and learn more about caregiving, in case it happens to you or if it already has. Thank you ever so much for attending, and we will look forward to seeing you next week. And we are done.
Thank you so much.